Hi, I'm Lauren from Lemon Sky, LSP, and in this tutorial I'm going to dive in and show you some quick tips you can use when editing newborn in Photoshop into a digital background with a little bit of tricky masking involved using a flat JPEG digital. The example I've got on my screen right now is one of our Cozy Boho Moon and Stars Nightlight Cradles, available on the LSP Actions website, lsp-actions.com. First thing you want to do is open up the digital background in Photoshop. Next up, you want to go File, Place Embedded, or drag and drop your baby image over the top. I'm just going to zoom to fit screen here. Now you notice the baby image comes in as a solid layer over the top of your digital background. At this stage, what I like to do, on the Layers panel, make sure you can see your Layers panel. You can go to Window, Layers, to make sure you can see it, is come up to the opacity of the baby layer and bring this down. Then we can see the background through it. Control or Command and T will help you resize and reposition this. So you want to resize and get baby roughly in the place you need for masking into the digital background. You'll notice in this digital background the light is actually coming from the right of the screen. In baby image the light is coming from the left. Nothing screams digital background more than the lighting being mismatched. So at this stage I'm going to right click and choose flip horizontal. If you don't want to flip the baby image, you could also right click and flip horizontal on your background, on the digital background. Just make sure they match. So I'm just going to add baby in and double click or hit enter, and at this stage we can bring our opacity back up again. Just going to zoom in. Now next up we're going to want to mask the baby. If you are matching with a simple digital background, this is really easy to do, but I've deliberately chosen this moon because it has a rim on it that we want to mask baby in. Now in our collection you actually get a PSD Photoshop file of this image, which actually includes the topper over the top, but which makes it easier. That bit's already masked for you. But for this tutorial, I just wanted to show you how to use this as a flat JPEG because it's a great example of masking that I can show you. Layer masks are like lotto scratch cards. Black means hide and white means show. You can add a layer mask to your newborn layer by coming down to the bottom of your layers panel, the little rectangle with a circle, hit that one, and you'll see now we have this white box next to our newborn image. This is a layer mask. If I was to hold down Control or Command and hit I, that inverts it to black, which means the baby's disappeared. So what you can do is you can grab a brush, set to black, and you can begin painting this away. I'm going to just adapt the softness of my brush. For very in focus areas you want a hard brush. You can just right click and change this as you go. For soft focus, shallow depth of field, you want a soft brush. So knowing how to quickly right click and change your brush settings is really important. So if you're in an old version of Photoshop or a limited version such as Elements, which don't give you all the options, you can just go in and mask like this. But because I'm in Photoshop Creative Cloud, which I assume many of you watching will be, the easiest way to do this is to come up Select and hit Subject. It normally does a quite good job. Sometimes you'll find little bits are included, but that's okay because you can mask them. You can also come onto your Object Selection tool, hold down Shift, and you can add more areas to this selection, or hold down Alt to take areas away. Now because the baby is selected, if I am now going to paint on the layer mask with a black brush, it's going to paint the baby away. The exact opposite effect of what we need. So hold down Control or Command, Shift and I, that inverts your selection. So now look, we can paint away the background. Just making my brush a little larger because it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I know the baby image is protected. I'm just sweeping that over, making sure I get all the corners. One thing Photoshop selection is not great at is recognizing shallow depth of field. So if you do shoot at a lower f-stop, you've got some blur in there, you're going to want to kind of come in manually, come over with black to hide or white to show, and just soften this up. You can also click on the blur tool and just come over just to blur and soften any hard selections. Hard selections are fine on in focus areas. They're not so good in shallow focus. To switch between a black and a white brush, you can hold X on your keyboard and hit this. X, 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 and that is a really quick way of editing. I always edit with one hand on my keyboard. H allows you to move the canvas around. I have my thumb on B to go back to brush, and X to change between black and white. And if you want, on our LSP Actions website, you can grab our free keyboard shortcuts under our free stuff section. So I'm just helping that mask a little bit. Now, of course, the main area of masking in this image is going to be the rim of the cot. So for a moment, I'm going to hide the baby and click on the background. What we want to do is mask this area so we can quickly add that to the layer mask. To do that, I'm going to start with the object selection tool and draw a selection and see what it thinks. You can see it's selected mattress, so I'm going to hold down Alt and say no thank you Photoshop and go over that. And it's done quite a good selection. You can also come up here on quick selection tool and you can just drag this along, which is really, really helpful. I go in small areas, regularly unclicking your mouse and going back on again, just to help Photoshop know what you want to select. Ooh. Alt will take away a selection and Shift will add to your selection. So I'm just running up here. Now that is not going to be the easiest way for Photoshop to mask, so that's a manual masking area there. Again, remember with this digital background, I do provide the layers included, so you don't need to do all this. I'm just showing you this because it's a great example if we take a flattened JPEG. So now I can click on the baby layer onto the layer mask, grab my brush set to black, and a little larger, and I'm just going to sweep this area away. There will be a little bit of masking refinement, but that's a pretty good mask so far. So you can see baby is now inside the cot. I'm going to zoom in to 200%, grab a hard brush. I'm going to switch to white because this is, we're wanting to show the baby, aren't we? So white on the baby mask. And I'm just going to carefully come in now and make this good. You want your selections to be good because you want your clients to be able to print this nice and big. You can play with the brush softness. I'm using quite a hard brush right now. You can play with the opacity, which is how transparent your brush is. I generally work at 100% opacity. And what I like to change is the flow up here. The flow is how much of your brush kind of comes out, how quick it flows. I'm on 70%, which is a high flow, but you can go down to a lower flow and build it up if you want to. These things can seem, I guess, quite daunting to a beginner if you're not used to Photoshop, but if you can follow along with this step by step, before you know it, in no time, you'll be doing this without even thinking. You'll be holding conversations at the same time, watching Netflix on your other monitor. You know, it's just stuff that kind of, after a while, you can just kind of do this. So I'm editing with X, my finger sitting on X on the keyboard. And there we go. That's a nice selection there. So you can see now baby is nestled into the bed. Next up, what I want to do is add some shadows and shading. You can add shadows to the background. You can add shadows to baby. There's two different ways to do this. What I'm going to do first on the baby mask is grab my brush, set to white, make sure it's nice and soft. And I'm going to take the flow down because I don't want too much coming out. And I'm just going to lightly add a little bit of the original background back in. The more you can blend the two together, the better. And next up, I want to add some shading and shadows. So I'm going to click on the background layer, come down to our adjustments, which is a little half and half circle, and choose levels. You get a histogram come up like this. So you can darken and you'll see the whole background is darkening. If you need extra darkness for shadows, I'm looking at this area of the bed and it's still quite bright. So I'm going to pull down here the bottom slider in the white, so I'm going to bring that more towards the darks. Just going to want it nice and dark. Now the whole image is very, very dark now, so I'm going to hit Control or Command and I. That inverts it to black. And you've guessed it, I'm going to grab a white brush, nice and soft this time, and just use this to paint a little bit of shading on underneath our baby layer. Keep blending the baby, keep blending the digital background, just blend, blend, blend together until you're happy. If you want to add shadows specifically to the baby, you might want some coming over here. What you do is you add a levels layer above the baby, but then right click and choose create a clipping mask. And what happens now is any adjustments you make to this layer are only going to affect your baby layer. So darken this down. I'm mainly looking along this area, I'm not worrying about the rest of it. Nice and dark. If you find it's making the skin too red, you can change the blend mode of the levels layer to luminosity. Control or Command I to invert. Nice soft white brush, and I'm just gonna really lightly bring this along. I'm especially looking at areas where baby would be touching the side of the cradle there. And you can go back to a black brush to take this off anywhere that you need to. And we've added some shadows and shading in. Take a little bit of the initial shading off this area of the background. Now we've added shadows, shading and blending. And at this point you might be happy. You might want to add more additional editing layers to the baby. For example, I'm going to click above the baby layer just for this image, and I'm going to add a photo filter that's going to warm the baby up. At the moment it's warming the entire image up, as you can see. So I'm going to right click, create a clipping mask so it only affects this baby layer. And bring the density up until the warmth is matching. And there we go. And we have our digital background, and you can mask any of these. Masking and adjustments are the key to beautiful blending. So I hope this helped. That's where we started and where we finished. And because you've masked, all these layers are still intact, and you can go in and refine as needed. I hope that's a really helpful tutorial for you. I'm going to grab that blur brush. I'm just going to blur the mask even more here to get that shallow depth of field. If you want to blur any area on the background, you can right click, duplicate the layer, hit OK. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. I'm looking at this area here. Add the mask, Control or Command I to invert, and then just paint that blur on with white. And that will help you match the depth of field. If you do shoot with a shallow depth of field, if you shoot with a firmer depth of field, then that's absolutely fine. You don't need to worry about blurring. And there we go. And that's how to edit a tricky newborn digital background using Photoshop Creative Cloud. If you use older versions of Photoshop, you can just add these masks manually and paint in. If you really want to create these hyper-realistic digital backgrounds blends quickly, you can head over to LSP Actions and grab our digital background editing kit, which has all the layers you need. A lot of the stuff I've just shown you manually, it has all of that, and it has over 70 instant layers. As you can see here, color change, contrast, vignette, cooling, warming, lightening, masking, blending, everything is included to really help you blend newborns realistically and beautifully with digital backgrounds. Digital backgrounds can really enhance your client galleries. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. You can find more information over at lsp-actions.com. This moon in the tutorial is part of the Enchanty Picks collection. I'm Lauren, thanks for watching.